to the refractometer calibrating testing and a few of the things that you can look out for. Okay, where does this refractometer come from? Well, primarily this comes from the work of Dr. Kerry Reams. If you can recall, we talked about Kerry Reams has a lot to do with pH, flow dynamics, understanding the effects of pH and whatnot, and also on sugars especially, and being able to gauge sugar content, blood sugar content and whatnot purely by doing some analysis using a refractometer. Okay, so Dr. Kerry Reams, brilliant man. Okay, what do we mean? Now I think most of you, or the majority of you probably already have purchased one of these, and you've probably already done a bit of Googling and worked out how to use them. They're pretty simple, but we'll just go through the process anyway, just to make sure that those of you that haven't got one, look, I must admit, out of all the tools that we use, I mean, there were some very very powerful tools, measuring tools we have, especially when you start to learn how to interpret some of the numbers. This is a very powerful, very easy to use tool that really doesn't break the bank in regards to what it's going to cost. I think you can pick them up for you know, $25–30 or something. So it's really something that I advise everybody to get if you can possibly afford it. Okay, so what have we got here? We've got the refractometer. There's a number of components. We have the focus adjustment at the end, the eyepiece. This is where we actually look through the cylinder here. We've got a rubber grip so we can hold on to it here. A calibration set screw. Now you can see on the video I show you how we do the calibration there. You've got a daylight plate. So this is a plate that actually closes down onto the sample, which basically sandwiches the sample between this plate and the main prism assembly. Okay, so pretty standard tool, and it's one of these tools that a lot of farmers will use to be able to gauge when to harvest their crop, because it can give you a good idea of the mineral and the sugar content in that crop. So if, for instance, if you're harvesting sugarcane, for instance, well, how do you know when to start harvesting? Well, you can just take a bit of the juice from the sugarcane, put it through onto the refractometer, and you can have a look and get an idea of the level of sugars that are actually in that sample, and whether we're actually at a point where we can do the harvesting. It's ripe, if you like. Okay, as far as the refractometer, when measuring fluids with a refractometer, it gives us a way to measure the specific gravity of the fluid, or another way of putting it, measuring the weight of the fluid. Okay. How it works? Well, let's say you place water in a cup. Most of you have probably done this in the past. When a pencil is dipped into that water, the tip appears bent if you look down into the water. Now, if you start putting some concentrated sugar, for instance, into another cup and try the same thing, that you'll notice that the tip of the pencil will appear more bent. Okay, this is the phenomenon of light refraction. Okay, which is the basis of how this refractometer works. Okay, so refractometers are measuring instruments in which this phenomenon of light refraction is put into practical use. They're based on the principles that as the density of the substance increases, e.g. when the sugar is dissolved in water or fruits or veggies or whatever, its refractive index rises proportionately. So the more concentrated the solution is with the dissolved solids, the more the light will bend. This is known as the angle of refraction. Okay, an index value has been established for each of these angles of refraction, and this refractive index can be used to evaluate a given liquid. The Brick scale, due to its flexibility of use amongst nearly every industry, is the most common scale found on refractometers today. The Brick scale is named after the inventor, the German scientist Adolf Brix, and it directly correlates to the refractive index, ND scale, and is calibrated to a number of grams of cane sugar, sucrose, contained within 100 milliliters of water. So therefore the Brix reading equals the actual sucrose concentration When we measure biological fluids, the soluble solid content is a total of the solids dissolved in that fluid, beginning with protein, minerals, etc. The Brix reading is the value of the sum total of those, all of those. Okay, so there is a little bit of work we need to do. We're not just measuring sugars, okay, but it's a damn good indication. So when a conductivity and protein measurement begin to range past a certain points, for instance, you can account for this extra stuff in the fluid and make appropriate adjustments. So you would be seeing the balance of the complex sugars in the fluid. This is what I'm saying. If we've got if we've got high conductivity, got high proteins or whatever going on in the blood, well, these are some of the things we may be seeing and reflecting this light. And we need to account for that. This is another reason why we need to look at everything. Okay? But once again, this is a tool that we can still use on its own to give us a fairly good idea. And at the end of the day, it's something you can really calibrate to how you're feeling anyway, which is the ultimate goal, is how you feel, as opposed to reaching a certain number, whether that number makes you feel good or makes you feel bad. Okay? But once we start getting into the more complex testing, we can start to really get down to the nitty-gritty in regards to, well, what are we seeing here? I mean, minerals, and if we've got high minerals, we're going to have high sugars. They come together. Okay, but what about the proteins and other stuff that might be in solution, which we need to account for? Okay, now this work, as I said, comes from Kerry Reams, and Dr. Kerry Reams came up with a bit of a scale here. Now, remembering this doesn't account for errant protein or salts in the system this is also picking up. Okay, but it's a pretty good scale to go by in regards to, look, if you're at home, this is something you can do throughout the day. Just take a little bit of a pee sample, especially if you're feeling bad or you're feeling extra good. Have a little pee sample and see where you fit on this scale. Okay, what we're looking for on the Brix, which is the reading on the left, it's a specific gravity on the right. It's the same thing, but it's just a different reading. What we're looking for is between 1.5 and 2.5. This is the most desirable range. And when we say the most desirable range, we're talking about, this is where you should be feeling your most best. I mean, this is all about sugars. This is all about energy. And if we're outside of those ranges, 0.1 to 2.5 is obviously quite low. 2.6 to 5.5 is what we call the zone of misery. And if you do your testing and you find your numbers up around in anywhere in between those two numbers there, I can almost guarantee you're feeling pretty crap. And then if you can do something, you can take some action to be able to reduce that. And it might be just a matter of taking some chromium, some banabichrome, or some comfrey tea or something like that will actually drop the sugars down. You will notice the difference once it starts coming down to those lower numbers. And 5.5 to 10 is very high. Okay, a lot of you, or a lot of the people that I work with, tend to be in the 2.6 to 5.5 because I've worked with a lot of slow oxidizers. A lot of people having issues processing sugars. Okay, so really this is what we're looking for, and this is really the only, at this point, the only numbers you really need to be concerned with. Okay, what I've got here, some of you have already seen one of these. I've posted this a few times. One of the fun things you can do with the refractometer is take it into your supermarket or take it to your market, take a little garlic crusher or something like that, and break off a little bit. Say you're measuring a carrot. Okay, I want to measure the carrot. What sort of mineral content do we have? Remember, the sugars stick closely with the minerals. The minerals come with the sugars. So if you've got a relatively high minerals, we're going to have relatively high sugars in general. And you'll be surprised that, and you just crush a little bit of that carrot up into the garlic crusher. So you only need a couple of drips of juice. Put it on the refractometer and have a look, and then refer to this scale here to see where that veggie or that fruit sits in regards to where it should be. And you might be very surprised, even if you're measuring organic versus non-organic, you'll be surprised of how little mineral content is in these fruit and veggies these days. Okay, So it's a great tool to do that. I advise you to go and do it. It might feel a little bit awkward. You can certainly do it at the market. Like I said, just buy a carrot or whatever, or buy a cucumber or a piece of celery, and you might be very surprised. You might have one stick of celery, on the right, and that's maybe $2, and you might have another one that's, say, maybe $5, and you think, oh, well, I'm going to buy the $2 stick of celery. It's got to be cheaper. But what we've got to remember is, why are we buying the celery in the first place? We're buying it. Why do we eat it in the first place? Well, we're buying food and we're eating that food because of the nutritional content, because of the nutrition our body requires. So should we not be measuring the levels of nutrition and comparing that in the price, as opposed to comparing the look? They look the same. So this is something you can do. Go and take a sample of the cheap one and a sample of the more expensive one, and you might find out that the more expensive one has 10 times more minerals in it than the cheap one, and therefore the more expensive, or the ones that we thought might have been more expensive to start with, becomes cheap because of the value of the nutrition. All right, and you can do this with a lot of fruit and veggies, and I encourage you to do so. Okay, and not only that, of course, I encourage you to, as much as possible at home, it's so easy to do. Just take a sample every now and then, and just have a look and gauge how you're feeling, and you'll start to get a bit of a feel for where you need to sit on this scale. Okay, it's a very good measurement for that. It's a very good marker to be able to say, you know what, I'm feeling pretty damn good. Let's go and have a look at my bricks. 3 weeks later, I'm feeling damn good. Let's go and have a look at my bricks. Is there any correlation there? You'll probably find there will be patterns. I'm feeling really bad. I'm feeling really down. I've got some anxiety going on. I'm lacking oxygen. What's going on? Let's have a look at my bricks. And you may find you'll start to learn some of the relationships between the bricks and how you feel, and then also ongoing to look at some of the other numbers. Okay, so it's an important, very, very important tool, but very, very simple to use. I'm just going to touch on sugars, because what we're doing here really is we're talking about measuring sugars, and measuring sugars cause chaos in the body. All right, if there was one thing that really throws the body out of whack, it's sugars. Okay, so all low sugars involve disordered pancreatic function. And at the end of the day, if we have pancreas problems, we've got so many other problems. This isn't just directly related to sugar. Okay, but the pancreas will be involved. If the pancreas is involved, the gallbladder is probably going to be involved. If the gallbladder is going to be involved, the liver is going to be involved. Okay. So with the pancreas, it just results in the reduced production of bicarb and proteolytic enzymes, which are the enzymes for breaking down protein, and it just creates incomplete metabolism of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And you can imagine if just this one problem here, not being able to break down and assimilate fats, cell membrane problems, proteins, not being able to rebuild the body, carbohydrates to be able to generate energy. Okay, now there are lots of other reasons why we may have pancreatic issues as well, and when we do, especially when we've got gallbladder issues as well, because they're very, very closely linked. As soon as I start seeing gallbladder issues, the first thing I look at is, do we have sugar issues as well at the same time? And more often than not, we don't. We do. And at the end of the day, why is it so important? Because the sugars have the greatest effect on overall feeling of well-being of all the numbers we're measuring. Okay, if we can start working on these sugar numbers, start to get them into range, and when I say into range, I'm talking about into the range that suits us, that suits you. It's going to be a little bit different. If we can start getting you feeling better, okay, are we fixing up all the other issues? Are we fixing up cell membrane issues? No, not necessarily, but what we're doing is we're pushing the body in the right direction. We're starting to feel better. We're starting to offer some manifest more positive feelings, more positive vibes, more positive energy, which then just snowballs the whole healing effect. Okay, and we start to pull the body into some sort of balance where we're not. It's not sort of struggling to juggle all these balls, and now it's got sugar issues to deal with because it knows it's so important. Okay, and getting the sugar levels right, if you've got high sugar levels or even low sugar levels, getting it right, being able to make those adjustments, and there are a number of ways of doing that, ultimately to fix digestion and fix the system. But once you've nailed that, apologize for that. My mind, someone went past the door and I lost my train of thought there. But what I'm saying here, once you get these sugars right, and we start getting, because sugar has such a big effect on, for instance, on oxygen levels, and we don't have oxygen levels, well, we're going to feel pretty crap. We're not going to have very good energy levels, physical energy levels. We're not going to have very good mind energy levels. We're going to be quite depressed. So big deal with the sugars, and just like I said, just by using this tool alone can really help us start working in this area and start getting us feeling better, and therefore getting this momentum forward as opposed to treading water or heading, going backwards. So just going back to what I was just mentioned, blood oxygen levels are directly affected by blood sugar levels, going too high or going too low. Okay, and reduced oxygen levels affects the brain and the liver. Now, can you imagine not getting oxygen into the liver? The ability of the liver to be able to produce enzymes and to do its job, not getting oxygen into the brain, not getting oxygen into the tissues as well. It's pretty serious stuff. Okay, now there are a number of other reasons why we lack oxygen, but sugar levels are directly related. I have seen people have dramatic changes in how they feel and the level of clarity within 15 minutes of taking some comfrey tea, for instance, and bringing their sugar levels down. It's chalk and cheese. Okay, it can have that much of effect. Okay, and just some of the issues or symptoms or problems that manifest from low sugars. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff here. Now, of course, this stuff is quite generic. There are lots of other cross relationships and whatnot, but you can see some of the issues involved with low sugars. More often than not, like I said before, most of my clients tend to be on the high side than the low side. The high side, these are the sorts of things we have. Chronic fatigue is a big one. All right, sugar's going to be involved in chronic fatigue. It's going to be involved somewhere. Emotions are going to be involved somewhere. Okay, eye problems, precipitation, calcium precipitation, excuse me, you name it. Okay, so there's some of the issues that can manifest, and some of the symptoms you can look for to see, well, does that really relate to what's going on with me? Okay, just some of the formulas. Just look, when we start working on the on fixing the sugars and whatnot, ideally we're doing this in the context of healing the whole body. Okay, but there are some things you can do if you want to try. Just look, I've got high sugars. What do I do? What can I do right now, this minute, that I don't need to worry too much about how it's affecting everything else? So there's just a few things to do there. If you've got low sugars, focus on adrenals. Okay, get some minerals into you, get some multivitamins into you, get some protein into you, and maybe some sweetened lemon water. Okay, so we can subtly start improving that situation. And for high sugars, unsweetened lemon water, Banabachrome, this is an Empirical Labs product, it's a chromium. Look, if you've got high sugars, one of the things you're probably lacking in is chromium, which is responsible for helping the body process sugars, okay? Vitamin B6, P5P. Look, I'm not a great fan of taking tons of this stuff, but one of the things you will notice quite often, when we get very alkaline, we tend to have high sugars, and we tend to have this these symptoms that are really quite weird. Some anxiety, just a bit lightheadedness, just can't really put your finger on it. And when this happens, and maybe headaches too, on top of the head, the back of the head. When this happens, the first thing I ask the client is what's your pHs? And I can almost guarantee that your own pH is quite high. And then we may look at the sugars as well, but they're going to be quite high. B6 or P5P will drop that like a brick. Okay, and it's something that can really take the pressure off, and it's one of these interventions that can make a difference in 20 minutes. Okay, and because what we want to try and do is bring that pH of the urine down. Okay, as we go up, as the pH of the urine goes up, especially above 6.5, we will start running into issues with headaches and some anxiety and some weird stuff, this weird feeling going on. All right, so that's just the trick there. Check the pH and just say it's too high. You need to knock it down. We need to knock down the urine pH, but we don't necessarily need to knock down the saliva pH, and B6 will do this. Okay, vitamin E, calcium, but get the calcium from, make sure we're getting heaps of calcium. And remember, calcium is not an easy mineral to get hold of. We have to have very, very good balance of stomach acid, gallbladder, bile, pancreatic enzymes, everything to be able to work very, very synergistically for you to get calcium. Okay, there's only a short period of time you've got to get calcium once it's digested, and we put it into the small intestines, because it needs to stay ionized in an acidic solution, and it's not long before once we start to go through the process of digestion, that this acidic chime from the stomach is mixed with the alkalinity of the bile and the pancreatic enzymes, and then we don't get that ionized calcium. Okay, that's it for this presentation side of things. And what we're going to be doing now, I'm going to be putting you onto a video where I'm going to show you how to calibrate, and how I'm going to and to also use the refractometer.
Okay, we have the refractometer here, which is a very simple tool. There's not a lot to it. You can see at the end there's a little focus glass here, which you can just turn and focus once you look inside here. You've got the base. We have a calibration little screw here, which is what we use to calibrate, which I'll be showing you in a second. We have the little plastic cover slide here. Basically that covers the sample, and the sample basically sits on this plate here. Okay, now it's a refractometer. So what we're talking about here is light refracting through the particles that are in solution here. Okay, so to calibrate, it's very, very simple, and we must use distilled water. Okay, so to calibrate, it's a simple matter of opening up the flap here, taking just a little bit of tiny drop of distilled water, placing the distilled water on the plate there, closing the little plastic lid, pushing it down. You can see it spread out, and then it's just a matter of looking into the sight glass, and what we're looking for is a 0 on the bricks. Okay, as you look through, you'll see the bricks on the left and you'll see the SG on the right. We're looking for a 0. Most of these are going to be calibrated fine, no problems at all. But if not, there's a little screw at the top here which you just have to turn, and you can adjust it, and you'll see the little marker adjust up and down. Okay, so 0 is what we're after. Okay, now as far as taking the sample, it's as simple as what I did just now. Let's just say we wash that off. What we would do, we would wash that off there. I'm not using P here. I'm in the hotel room at the moment. I don't have the facilities to use P, so I don't use it. Doesn't matter. But it's just a simple matter of opening up, taking a sample of the P, putting a little drop on here, remembering the water has disinfectant in there, of course, closing it off, having a look through, and then reading the bricks on the left-hand side. And that's about it with the brixometer. There's nothing else to it. Okay, and obviously make sure once you've finished using it, usually we'll have a tub here with disinfectant in the water, and it's just a matter of just rinsing the tool there and letting it dry. Okay. So that's the refractometer.